Welcome everyone. The webinar will begin shortly and will be recorded. Connect with the campaign for grade level reading on social media. On Facebook, like the page Campaign for GLR, and on Twitter, follow the account at Reading by Third. Please use hashtag Learning Tuesdays and tag us to tweet anything you learn from today's webinar, and we'll be sure to retweet. We encourage you to share your questions, reflections, and observations on social media. Once again, we would love to connect. So on Facebook, like the page Campaign for GLR, and on Twitter, follow the account at Reading by Third. The webinar will begin shortly. It will be recorded and shared with you afterwards. Okay, once again, welcome to today's webinar. My name is Sierra Sanchez, and I will be behind the scenes helping to produce this conversation. I have just a few housekeeping details before we get started. First, we would love for you to introduce yourself, so please use the chat box at the bottom of the screen to share your name, city or state, and your organization. Be sure when responding to select both panelists and attendees so that we all know who is here. All attendees are in listen-only mode, but we encourage your engagement by posting questions in the Q&A box. We will dedicate the last portion of the conversation to respond to the questions you post during the webinar. This webinar is being recorded, and a link to the recording will be emailed to all who registered, and we are streaming this conversation on our Facebook Live. All resources that you see shared as links in the chat will be compiled and shared in a follow-up email to all webinar registrants, and materials are accessible on GLR's Community Learning for Impact and Improvement platform, aka CLIP. Please take 30 seconds, if you haven't yet done so, to create a free account so that you don't miss the bios, slides, and other materials from today's session. Finally, we will be posting a brief on-screen evaluation during Q&A and highly encourage you to respond. This helps us with our commitment to continuous improvement. Lastly, before we start, I would just like to call your attention to our upcoming GLR Learning Tuesdays webinars. Next week on June 8th, we have an exciting double header with a Crucible of Practice session at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time, featuring the GLR Community Coalition in Dalton-Whitfield County, Georgia. And then at 3 p.m. Eastern Time that same day, we have the follow-up to today's discussion with part 2 of the Big Bets series, when we will focus on EdTech-enabled teaching and learning. On June 15th at 3 p.m., we will engage in discussion with superintendents about what they most want to learn from early childhood educators about how to prepare for the fall 2021 classes of kindergartners and early grade students, given the setbacks resulting from lost instruction over the past 18 months. And please join us again on June 22nd at 12:30 with our partners from the Overdeck Family Foundation, when we will learn how parent coaching can support them in preventing a summer learning slide for their children. We'll be sure to add a link in the chat box for more information and registration for these upcoming learning opportunities. Joining you now is Emily Samos, Senior Consultant with the Campaign for Grade Level Reading. Thank you and enjoy the webinar.
Thank you, Sierra, and welcome to everybody. We are so glad that you're joining us for today's GLR Learning Tuesdays webinar called Accelerating Equitable Learning Recovery Post-COVID, A Few Big Bets, and this is part 1 of 2. I'll tell you more about that. So today's exchange of ideas continues our Learning Loss Recovery Challenge series and our ongoing discussions about equitable learning acceleration post-COVID. From recent research by McKinsey and others, we know that pandemic necessitated school closures and uneven access to instruction has led to also uneven and far worse impact on children from economically challenged families. So to prevent lifelong effects, what is needed now are urgent, sustained, and innovative interventions that take us beyond what we have always done and creates, as the late Bob Slavin said, a new normal better than the one we had, in which we use our nation's strengths to heal and to build. And so with this in mind, the Campaign for Grade Level Reading is sorting through what works to find a few big bet-worthy programs and strategies that can deliver more than the usual increments of progress and contribute to transformative change. CGLR recently had the chance to join Education Week's Leadership Symposium to explore these big bets. And today we have the chance to reprise this presentation with a focus on 2 of the 3 big bets we discussed in the Leadership Symposium, including board certified teachers and Learning Happens Everywhere, which is a growing movement to transform communities into learning rich environments. And together we will watch the presentations from the Ed Week Symposium and then have the chance to engage in discussion live with both the leaders of these strategies and our colleagues implementing these big bets on the ground. And then next week, we'll come back to this with a big focus on ed tech enabled teaching and learning. So that's part 2 of this. And before we meet all of our featured speakers today, I have the privilege of introducing our moderator and renowned National Service and Youth Development Leader and my longtime colleague, John Gomperts. And then John will introduce our presenters and our commentators for today. So John Gomperts is a longtime leader in nonprofits and government organizations devoted to civic engagement and to creating greater opportunity for children and youth. And recently, thankfully, joined the campaign for grade level reading as a senior fellow. And before this, from 2012 to 2020, John served as president and CEO of America's Promise Alliance. So welcome, John. I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thanks. Thanks very much, Emily. And thanks especially to Emily and Sierra, who make these outstanding webinars happen so smoothly. It really is a pleasure to work with them. Thanks to our guests for joining. You will meet them all in just a moment. And thanks to everyone for participating on this day right after the holiday, and as we all try to return to work and prepare for summer at the same time. We really appreciate your being here. We look forward to your questions and comments throughout this session. As Emily mentioned, we're going to be looking at 2 big bets today: board certified teachers and the notion of learning happens everywhere. We have great presenters to join us, and I'm going to introduce all of them in a moment. Our goal in this conversation, just to be clear, what we're trying to deliver here, and you'll tell us in the survey that we do towards the end of this session whether we've succeeded. What we're trying to do is introduce a couple of ideas, and one that you will understand this idea and appreciate why we think it's a big bet. And the second is that if that particular idea and big bet intrigues you, you will be equipped with some ideas about how to proceed in your own community with your partners in pursuing that idea. So understand and equip for action are our goals. And as I mentioned, and Sierra mentioned as well, there'll be a survey near the end and you can tell us how we did. So with that, I'm going to introduce our panelists and conversants. As Emily mentioned, we have a sort of a split session today. We have 2 topics, but we also are going to intercut some videos, starting with Yoli, talking about Yoli Flores from Campaign for Grade Level Reading previously, and now Parent Nation, to explain what we mean by big bets and why they are big bets. Then we're going to turn to our guests. Peggy Brookins is the president and CEO of the National Board for Professional Teaching Standards, and she is a board certified teacher. So she knows whereof she speaks. Jane Park is joining us from the Clinton Foundation, where she's director of Too Small to Fail, an early childhood initiative of the Clinton Foundation. Those are our 2 presenters, and then our commentators will be Kathleen Alessandro, who is the executive director of Everybody Ready, a nonprofit that supports development and maintenance of equitable early childhood system in Detroit and Wayne County, Michigan, and Scott Muri, who's the superintendent of schools of EctorCounty Independent School District in Texas, and has previously worked in Houston and in Atlanta, leaving behind him a trail of successes. And then we'll have Brian Wallace, who is the president and CEO of the Coin Laundry Association and the executive director of the Laundry Cares Foundation. And finally, we have Carey Wright, who is the state superintendent of education in Mississippi and who has spearheaded the efforts in Mississippi, not only around board certified teachers, but around a whole series of investments that have led to really quite remarkable progress in Mississippi. And we are really pleased to have her and to have all of our guests join us. So with that, keep those folks in mind. And now we're going to go quickly to a video from Yoli talking about the big bets that that the grade level reading campaign is proposing. Sierra, you want to show some video? Roll the videotape, as they say.
Thank you. I'm so delighted to be here. The campaign for grade level reading was launched in 2012. It now represents and provides backbone support to a growing network of stakeholder coalitions in 350 plus communities across 46 states, the District of Columbia, Puerto Rico, United States Virgin Islands, Alberta, and Saskatchewan in Canada. The campaign's mission is straightforward: disrupt generational poverty and secure more hopeful futures for the children of economically challenged, fragile, and otherwise marginalized families. They work with local communities to remove the early obstacles, that first important rung of success sequence ladder, high school graduation. While the time between the early grades and high school may seem long, we know well that proficient reading and showing up to class regularly by third grade significantly influences a child's likelihood of completing high school. These stakeholder coalitions invest time, talent, and dollars to assure three basic objectives: that more young children show up ready for what good schools can offer, that more families get the help and support they need to promote everyday attendance, and that more communities find ways to help more students avoid the summer slide. And most inspiring, these coalitions work with schools, educators, and parents to move the needle on early literacy and grade level reading. You know, this is hard work. And when progress comes, it is jagged, unstable, slow, and in small increments. Even so, between 2012 and 2019, about 100 communities could report measurable and meaningful progress. But that was BC, before COVID. What progress there has been obliterated by the necessary school closures and resulting loss of in-person instructional time. This was coupled with limited access to remote learning devices. If students cannot connect, they cannot learn. And while there were heroic efforts by teachers, administrators, parents, and students themselves to mitigate the losses, the data is showing significant disruption of the learning process. Like the virus itself, this learning loss hit everyone, but reserved the hardest punches for the most vulnerable. In this case, the children of economically challenged, fragile, and otherwise marginalized families. The data tell us that for these children, McKinsey's prognosis could be prophetic. Without urgent and sustained attention, the hurt could last a lifetime. In addition to addressing the academic needs of the returning students, attention must be given to alleviating attendance hesitancy and putting in place people and programs able to respond to the inevitable emotional and social needs of students traumatized by the pandemic. Accelerating recovery for these children, especially in the early grades, must become an urgent priority for all of us. That is why the campaign for grade level reading is sorting through what works to find those big bet-worthy programs and strategies that can deliver more than the usual increments of progress and instead can contribute to transformative change. Today, I am pleased to lift up three such big bet efforts: EdTech, enabled teaching and learning, National Board Certified Teachers, and Learning Happens Everywhere, a growing movement to transform communities into learning-rich environments. The campaign for grade level reading looks forward to working with you, their community coalitions, and with others to ensure that these big bets leapfrog into big results. It's been great being with you today.
Terrific. Thanks, Sierra. So there, Yoli laid out the three big bets that we want to talk about. One of them we'll talk about next week, which is EdTech enabled learning. And that's going to be a terrific session. I encourage everybody to put that on your calendar right now. But today we're going to talk about the two others. Learning happens everywhere in a few moments, but we're going to start with National Board Certified Teachers. And to introduce the topic, we have a short video, about the same length as Yoli's video, 5-6 minutes, from Peggy Brookins, who I just introduced to you a moment ago, who will talk about the idea of board certified teachers and why it's so important. Sierra, you want to go ahead and roll that, and then we're going to have Peggy on for a conversation.
I am so glad to be a part of this conversation today and share our big bet. When I think about the most important investment and intervention for teaching and learning, I think of one thing: teachers. Teachers are the most impactful in-school factor on student learning. A professional workforce of accomplished, diverse teachers is instrumental in reversing learning loss, accelerating student learning, and closing an enduring and equitable achievement and opportunity gap that we have seen exacerbated by this pandemic. At the National Board, our work focuses on ensuring that every student has the opportunity to be taught by a highly accomplished teacher every day. The National Board sets the standards for what accomplished teachers should know and be able to do, and through National Board certification, teachers demonstrate their ability to teach to those high standards. Today, there are more than 128,000 National Board certified teachers teaching millions of students each year. We believe there is no better bet to ensure equitable, excellent, and accelerated student learning than growing the number and diversity among National Board certified teachers across the country. Decades of research have shown a positive impact National Board certification has on teacher performance, teacher retention, and student learning. NBCTs have deep knowledge of student and subject matter and utilize that expertise to support individual students' learning, including social emotional learning. They routinely reflect on their teaching to make sure they are meeting students' needs and constantly improving their practice. They develop and reinforce their leadership skills, and research shows they stay in the classroom longer, leading to more experienced teachers and a more stable workforce. Students of NBCTs gain an additional 6 to 8 weeks of learning and demonstrate deeper learning. We want to bring that high quality accomplished teaching to every classroom in America, and we have some strong momentum already. But it requires the policy support and investment of state and district leaders. Currently, more than half of the states across the country offer board certified teachers a financial incentive for achieving the highest level of professional standards. We have seen the amazing impact that growing the number of NBCTs can have on improving that student learning. In 2016, following another year below the national average scores on NAEP, Mississippi made a significant investment to increase the number of NBCTs in the state. By 2019, they ranked #1 in the nation for gains on NAEP. This was the largest score gain over a 2-year period in 4th grade reading and mathematics, and they showed a significant growth and continued attainment in 8th grade math and reading. In 2017, the Mississippi study found that kindergarten students taught by NBCTs were 31% more likely to achieve a proficient score in the kindergarten readiness assessment and 19% more likely to achieve growth in their literacy assessment performance. In a short time, Mississippi's concentrated focus on improving student learning, in part by growing the number of NBCTs, vaulted student learning across the state. The impact of the pandemic has been detrimental to teachers and students, and pre-existing challenges have only made it worse. The profession, already suffering shortages and instability, has lost more teachers. School closures left many of our most vulnerable students without resources and opportunities needed to continue learning. Providing teachers with professional support and making sure all students have access to the MBCTs can mitigate the harmful consequences of the pandemic. Every National Board Certified teacher can serve as a lighthouse, helping to lead students and communities to a brighter, more successful future. If we can scale National Board Certification, we can shine that light over all children, their classrooms, their families, and communities. We will see a profound positive outcome for generations to come. As policymakers and education leaders face the road to building our post-pandemic education systems, investing in National Board Certification can drive immediate change and build a more equitable foundation for a stronger tomorrow. A bet on National Board Certification is a win for students, communities, and our collective future.
Ooh, that was good, Peggy. Peggy, turn on your camera and join us live now. Thank you. Thanks so much.
Thank you, John.
Okay, you were super smooth and super good, but let's unpack this a little bit. And so, because I'd like for people to understand with a little more depth what this means and how this works. So your proposition that we share is that this should be a big bet. If the notion of big bets is something that we can all invest our time and energy and resources in, that will cause more than just that incremental change, but really, boom, nonlinear change. You're saying board certified teachers is that thing. Explain why you think this is such a big bet for the campaign and for the country.
I think, John, being an MBCT helps as well. And I look at myself, I had taught for almost 15 years before National Board existed. And therefore, when I became an MBCT, I could see a clear delineation between when I was board certified and before I was board certified. The transformation is incredible. The intentional way that you plan lessons, the collaboration, the reflection, the analysis, the synthesis of data and making decisions and thinking about how you work with your colleagues. And the way that we have set up National Board, the process itself right now is embedded in schools, it's embedded in districts, and it is that perfect professional development to just catapult your teaching in the classroom forward. Like you say, that it would be exponential if every single person could go through the process. We have some research that says that even having one board certified teacher makes a difference on a campus. Can you imagine if every teacher on campus was board certified, and to get the kind of results that we could get from that?
So we talked about this a little bit when we connected beforehand. Can you help us a little bit? Like, what does that mean to become board certified? I know that we're not like cutting off the top of a cereal box and sending that in and getting a little thing back in the mail. Like, what does it mean to become board certified? Who's eligible? How long does it take? Because you say board certified teachers have all these qualities when they've emerged on the other side. What's the process?
So if you have a BS degree, you're a teacher of record in a school and you have 3 years experience. And there are some states that don't require that BS depending on which certification you're going to get, like CTE. But you can take anywhere from 1 to 3 years to upload your initial components. And there are 4 components. There are theme-based components, The first is content knowledge and pedagogy, which is absolutely essential. Differentiation and instruction, the teaching and learning environment. And there are 2 videos where you kind of put all of your knowledge together along with that differentiation, and you see yourself interacting and engaging with students in a classroom around lessons that you've built specifically for those students, not the ones you had years before or the ones you wish you had, but the ones who were in front of you, and how you learn and build this incredible relationship with them in order to be able to teach them, because you can't teach people you don't know. And then you think about the fourth component that you would upload would be the effective and reflective practitioner, because we have so much data coming at us, and we have to look at data literacy, assessment literacy, how we work with communities, how we work with our colleagues, and we gather all of that to make informed decisions in the classroom about what we're going to do, when we're going to do it, how we're going to do it, and then how we reflect on that. And the biggest of all is, how does all of this impact students? And are we moving them forward? How much are we moving them forward? And everything we do, that is our focal point about impacting student learning and those relationships that we build with them.
So who's the moving party here? Is it on a teacher to hear about this somehow and think, I want to be one of those, and then go through a series of online classes? Or is the principal, let's say, a moving party? Or how does this get started?
We're a voluntary system, so any teacher can start. It's nice to have your principal on board. That is incredible to have that person, because they need to understand about the support piece, about the time. And then you get onto the National Board website. You pick out which certificate area you have decided to pursue, and then you form an account with our assessment partner. You upload all of your material, and there are support systems around the country. We have about 75 networks around the country that help. We have online networks that help, particularly if you are in a region that doesn't have a large number of board certified teachers, or you're in a rural area. We want to help everybody. And we also have affinity networks that help, particularly maybe teachers of color who want to have an affinity network. And we have one called NAME, Network of Accomplished Minoritized Educators. So there are ways around, making sure, and we do this a lot in PLCs, professional learning communities, as well as embedded as the professional development within schools, and districts are doing it as well. It's a huge retention tool. MBCTs stay in the classroom 4 times longer than at 4 times the rate than anyone else. And we think about, the cost of replacing a teacher. It's almost anywhere between $10,000 to $20,000 to replace one teacher, when you can pay $1,900 to get a board certified teacher.
So it costs $1,900 from soup to nuts?
From soup to nuts.
So, and who's paying for that?
So sometimes individual teachers pay, districts pay, states pay. So it just varies. There are districts that is their professional development, so they pay. We have examples of where corporations pay. They want, a smart, educated community to bring in industry.
So do you get paid more if you're a nationally board certified teacher in some places? Are there places where that helps increase your salary?
Yes, there are places. I look at what's happening in the state of Maryland, where a teacher who becomes board certified gets a $12,000 raise, and then you get an additional raise for maintaining that certification. The state of Mississippi gives an incredible, raise and incentive for becoming board certified, and then another incentive for teaching in a high need school, districts that they have identified for that. In the state of North Carolina, the state of Delaware, there's states all over the place. And then there are places where districts are giving this. Some of them are negotiated by their union partners to say, within this district, this is going to be the incentive that we give you for board certification.
Okay, this is fabulous. But you say there are 128,000. How many teachers are there? K-12?
There about 3.5 million. So we're about 3.6% of the total population.
Other than being on this fantastic webinar, what's your game plan, Peggy? How are we getting more of these?
The game plan is to scale and diversify. So, my crazy idea is 1 million board certified teachers by the year 30, and that can happen. It's going to take, federal money. It's going to take state money in order to do that. But actually, it could happen before 2030 because it could be the professional development for everyone.
All right, I love that. We're going to put a pin in it right here. And that was great. I think everybody who's on and everybody who they're going to talk to is going to be enthusiastic about helping to get to 1 million and to help all those students. We will come back to you, Peggy, and also hear from Scott and from Carey about their experiences with board certified teachers. But now I'm going to turn to Jane Park from Too Small to Fail and the Clinton Foundation. We're going to start by watching again a short video in which Jane talks about the notion of learning happens everywhere. And then just as we did with Peggy, we're going to have a little conversation with Jane, and then we're going to bring in others to talk about all of this. And soon we'll be turning to questions from the audience as well. So Sierra, if you can tee up the video from Jane, that would be awesome.
At Too Small to Fail, we envision a world where all families have access to high quality early learning resources. We envision a world where every community is filled with spaces for young children to thrive, and where every parent is engaging in language-rich interactions with their children from birth. Our aim has really been to surround families with language and learning opportunities, not just in schools and libraries, but everywhere in all the spaces where they're visiting throughout their neighborhoods. For families, our approach is to, just make those small moments big, whether it's waiting for the bus or waiting for laundry to get done, really helping to fill those daily moments with language-rich activities like talking, reading, and singing. We know that children really learn vocabulary best through those gradual, recurrent exposures to new words in multiple contexts over time. So it really makes sense to turn these everyday spaces into learning-rich environments to provide those daily real-time exposures to opportunities for learning, as well as for social emotional development. For communities, we've been working with leaders on the ground to help create spaces where these moments can happen more often. Our big bet is to meet families where they are in everyday spaces where they visit with their children. So whether it's the local hospital waiting area, the grocery store, the neighborhood playground, the laundromat, the diaper bank, or even the family court, we're creating welcoming environments where families can gather, learn, play, and support each other. We do this through signage on the walls with fun and engaging parent-child conversation prompts about books and feelings and sunshine, playgrounds filled with messages to help parents turn playtime into fun opportunities to talk, read, and sing together, while they can access books through these little mini libraries or help bring stories to life through story trails as they walk along a path outdoors. Diaper changing stations can also be a learning moment. These are changing stations enhanced with messages encouraging parents to sing together during diaper time. Grocery stores that turn a routine shopping trip into a fun learning adventure and scavenger hunt for families as they talk about the fruits and vegetables they see or count the apples they put into the cart. We know that environment truly does matter and can shape behavior. Through our work with the Coin Laundry Association and the Laundry Cares Foundation, we've been proud to distribute early literacy resources through 5,000 laundromats across the country. And we've also transformed 100 laundromats nationally into playful literacy-rich environments. Why laundromats? We know that laundromats are spaces where families typically spend about 2.5 hours each week. And so this is quite a bit of time over weeks and months. And we've been working to turn these daily moments into rich opportunities for learning. We've also been forging collaborations with teachers, educators, and families and other trusted voices to bring programming into these environments. We know how important modeling is. So when teachers or educators or librarians model what it looks like to read a book with an infant, we know that just through our research, parents benefit tremendously. This work has evolved into transformations of other spaces. We've been thrilled to partner with the National Council for Juvenile and Family Court Judges to transform family court waiting areas, which we can all imagine could be a very stressful, traumatic place for children. So we've been transforming these waiting areas into playful literacy-rich environments. Other spaces where we've worked to highlight that learning can happen everywhere includes shopping centers like Westfield malls with digital ads, inside subways and on highway billboards, as well as public housing where families can walk through an outdoor environment and talk about shapes and colors and letters and play I Spy together. And in many of these spaces, we distribute tools and resources that caregivers can use. And we've been working to increase families' access to high quality resources like books and parent toolkits and music playlists to engage in literacy-rich interactions together at home and throughout the neighborhood. As we look ahead, we're very excited to engage in these types of transformative partnerships to reach families in places and spaces they visit on a regular basis. So whether it's restaurants or convenience stores, fueling stations, if we think about all these spaces where families are spending time, how can we maximize that time for families to turn those daily moments and trips to the grocery store or the fueling station into opportunities for learning? So we really encourage you to dream big with us, to take on this big bet with us, to really reimagine what neighborhoods could look like in ways that truly help children and families thrive. We're also eager to continue to build our partnerships with teachers, parents, caregivers, and other trusted voices to help create more of these environments and help spread the message far and wide that learning can happen everywhere. For more information about our resources, please visit talkingisteaching.org/communities. And I just thank you so much again. And big thanks to the Campaign for Grade Level Reading for this opportunity to share our big bet.
Oh, fantastic. Jane, put on your camera and join us live.
John. Great to see you.
Nice to see you. Thanks for joining. I'm not sure you know, there you are.
Hello.
Thanks so much for joining. This is great. I was just cheering. I was so enthusiastic during your video, and I know it's going to get even better. So you explained a little bit about what this notion is to create learning-rich environments. I'm really interested in the question that I also started with Peggy. Like, why is it? I mean, this seems like a great idea, but why is this a big bet?
Well, thank you, John, and a big thanks to the Campaign for Grade Level Reading for this opportunity to share about our big bet today. At Too Small to Fail, we've been leading a national public awareness and action campaign called Talking is Teaching, Talk, Read, Sing. And we heard from Peggy on the importance of board certified teachers and the tremendous impact that can have on children and their learning and their development. We're here to talk about those critical years of development before they even enter the classroom and come in contact with teachers, so that we can help lay a strong foundation even before they work with teachers. And if we're thinking about learning loss recovery, we do need to think about these big bets and what happens during that time before they enter the classroom. And as we emerge from this pandemic, I think we can all agree that we really need to think holistically about not just whole child development, but the whole environment that children and families are spending time in. And we know that 80% of a young child's waking hours are spent outside of the school environment. And so over the past several years, we've really been thinking about where are those environments where families are spending time. It's at the local laundromat, at the grocery store, at the bus stop. They might be going, hopping into the local convenience store. And so we have been working with partners, businesses, trade associations, local nonprofits, really to think about how we can transform these spaces into learning-rich environments. We know that families have been struggling more than ever in the past year due to the pandemic, where we've reimagined the way we work, we live, we go to school, we engage with one another. And so over the past year especially, we've been really thinking about how we can reimagine these spaces to really help lift burdens for families and create environments that make it easier for families to engage in these literacy-rich interactions and not give them one more thing to do and create extra burden. But John, as we've talked about, from a moment a parent steps into a space, whether it's a grocery store and if you have that young child in tow, the way that the environment is designed sends a message immediately. Do my kids feel seen here? Am I valued? Does my family matter? And at Too Small to Fail, we've been working, and also just want to acknowledge other wonderful organizations that we've been partnering with, like Playful Learning Landscapes, Brookins, and Kaboom, really to think about creative ways we can transform informal spaces in ways that really help parents feel supported and valued.
So it seems that's awesome, and seems so logical and simple. And so, what do you know about how this works? Both how it works for families and how it works for learning with kids.
Sure. So we've, over the past several years, we have been conducting research evaluations. We've been doing a lot of listening on the ground with families, parents with young children, educators. And one of the biggest kind of takeaways from our evaluations and our work on the ground, as well as on a national level, has been that when you transform the environment, behavior changes. And we've done this work in spaces like laundromats, where we led a 6-month evaluation across 20 laundromats in Chicago. And when you make simple changes, like creating a space for parents and children to read together and play together, that not only increases parent-child interactions and parents talking, reading, and singing more with their children and reading more books. We also found, and we'll hear a little bit from Brian Wallace later, who's the CEO of the Coin Laundry Association, but that families also promotes greater loyalty to the store, and in that they feel more valued as a customer. And so when you transform the environment, children are engaging in 30 times more literacy-rich activities compared to laundromats without. And we've just been delighted to work with other partners, as we just saw in the video, to transform other types of environments where families are spending time, like the grocery store, like the waiting room of family courts, and other environments where families are spending time.
Jane, I'm curious what you're doing to make more of this happen, and curious how you think about, what would you say to people who are watching and listening right now who think, oh yeah, that's a cool idea. Like, how would I do that in my town? What are you up to, and what advice do you have for others who are intrigued?
Sure. So we, just from our years of working with national and local partners, I think the first step is to partner and really identify a local champion. So it does involve local buy-in. We do have kind of turnkey solutions that we've created. So the spaces that you see in the laundromat, we have those, we provide those as kits that can be replicated in other spaces. So hopefully, community leaders, whether you're a school teacher or an educator or a local community organization, we've developed a wide range of tools and resources that can be implemented right away. So hopefully educators and others don't have to reinvent the wheel, but we do underscore that much of the work that's been done on the ground to create these learning happens, this learning happens everywhere culture really does involve local buy-in and a local champion. And so in all the communities where we have our Talking is Teaching campaigns, we have a local anchor organization. Sometimes it's a local funder. Sometimes it's a school or an early childhood organization that has really championed this, starting with listening to the community on the kinds of spaces and environments that they would like to transform. And we have a wide range of all the tools and resources that I showed earlier in the video are available and can be customized for any local campaign. I think what's been really exciting is how local leaders have taken our resources and customized them. Just as an example, we'll hear from Kathleen, one of our local partners in Detroit. It's been amazing to see that campaign grow from a local campaign in Detroit to a statewide effort, which we'll hear a little bit about, engaging trusted messengers from grocery store clerks to goat farmers, and really thinking about who those trusted messengers are. So I think what we have found to be particularly successful is not just transforming the environment, but also giving thought to who are trusted voices in the community who can help create that surround sound. And when you have that along with resources like books and high quality tools, there's this priming effect. And so those three components working together have been particularly effective. I did share a link here, talkingisteaching.org/communities is a great place to start to engage with all of our tools and resources that can be implemented almost immediately.
Fantastic. Thanks so much. Thanks so much, Jane. That's excellent. We sadly lost Kathleen, who she had something she had to deal with. But we have Brian with us from the Coin Laundry Association, and you mentioned laundromats. So I want to actually invite everybody, Carey and Brian, start a conversation. Scott also, sorry, start a conversation about all this. I want to first ask Brian about your experiences with the laundries, but then we have Scott and Carey, who are educators, but who also think about learning environments. So Brian, let me turn to you and just ask you to comment for a moment on your experiences with laundries and literacy.
Well, thank you, John, for having me on board with this and following my good friend Jane, who's been our sort of partner in crime, co-conspirator in cooking up some of these off-the-wall partnerships that when you, as you said, John, when you sort of think about it, it makes sense. It just had to sort of spring out of imagination. So for us, it's by every definition, for us, it's been transformational, right? So we're in a literal sense, transforming that empty corner of the laundromat into a mini library space that hopefully is being programmed by local literacy advocates, whether it be a librarian or another partner through the campaign, and sharing books and having those regular interactions, literacy-rich interactions. It's also transformational from a perspective of, hey, we're in business, right? And we formed a foundation so we can give back to our customers who demographically are the same folks that need these additional resources when it comes to literacy in early childhood. So for us, it's been sort of a doing well by doing good. It sort of provided the industry broadly with a corporate social responsibility campaign that we can all get behind. And as Jane alluded to, we're seeing a lot of great evidence that it's good for business, so that individual laundromat owner can use the presence of these materials and the engagement that happens there as a differentiator in the marketplace.
It's fantastic. You have resources available. If people listening think, oh, this is a good idea, and I want to see if some of the laundromats in my community are interested, there are resources available to folks?
Sure. Laundrycares.org is a great resource to get a better sense of what the program is more broadly, but also see where we have a network. We started up a network called the Laundry Cares Network. So we're enrolling laundromat owners to at least raise their hand and say, I'm a community-friendly business, and please share with me opportunities to connect with these types of efforts. So that's one resource that's there. We also have information on how to acquire one of these family read, play, learn centers, as we're calling them, these mini library spaces for inside the laundromat. And just more background on other events. Next week, we're post-COVID restarting our free laundry and literacy days. We're going to be in Indianapolis for a full day event where, again, we're taking care of our customers by providing free laundry, free soap, food, entertainment, but perhaps most important, we're going to be sharing books as well as ways to connect with other literacy resources locally.
Fantastic. Thanks so much. Kathleen, you're back. I'm so pleased because I'm really eager to hear about what you've been doing around this learning happens everywhere idea in Detroit, and how folks statewide are starting to pick up on it.
So 3 or 4 years ago, we were exploring ways that we could share the best information for families in terms of, there was a lot of attention to the 3rd grade reading test. We don't call it that. We talk about reading confidently is an 8-year process beginning at birth. And so we did research on 40 some early literacy programs, and the educators and infant mental health specialists on our team identified talking as teaching. We rolled it out low key. Parents and community leaders loved it. A pastor called it profound simplicity. And what we also loved about it is we could immediately use it. All of the creative work was done. Had that not been the case, we would still be talking about fonts 3 years in a row. So we were able to roll out all of these initiatives. We love to connect life points with touch points. Life points are the families with children 0 to 5. The children and the adults who care for them, that's about 250,300,000 people in Detroit and Wayne County. And life points. Life points are places where people go. Formal, that's where paperwork is exchanged, the doctor's office, schools, and the like, WIC offices. Informal are faith centers and libraries, and ad hoc are laundromats, playgrounds, and the like. So we have a little different community engagement for each of those. I will tell you, in rolling out Talking is Teaching, the beauty is parents own it. It is not a program where they attend it and then they're done. It becomes part of daily life. And I know this is hard to believe, but we've been operating this for over 3 years. In today's day and age, we've never had any negative kickback on this program. People see it, they love it. There are 2 comments that parents say, and these are said repeatedly. I didn't know this was important. I can do this, and I will do this. When that kind of ownership takes place with parents and grandparents, it is a game changer. Another mom said to us, on a daily basis, I feel overwhelmed, overloaded, and I feel incompetent. And now, with this Talking is Teaching knowledge, I am enough. So those 2 things came together and allow us to have a community campaign that's comprehensive, that is engaging. We had hoped to serve 150 to 200 families from October to this point. We're over 1,000, and we can barely keep up with the demand with virtual play groups. So it's not that we see a positive thing out of COVID, but when we changed the way we do business, we found that virtual engagement, parents loved it. And we have taken people on trips to the farm with Talking is Teaching, and the children ask the animals questions. And it is, again, the one piece of what we do, and we are charged by the state of Michigan with creating an equitable and accessible early childhood system. And we are obsessed with sharing the best, most doable information for parents who are already overloaded and overwhelmed. So we've been happy to be the leader in Michigan. It is now in nearly all the counties in Michigan, and it's powerful. It's powerful because parents own it.
So let's stick with that for a second, because it's so logical to try to engage and support parents in helping their kids in this way. And it is equally easy to see why folks would think this is a burden, and this is a judgment on the way I've been parenting and so forth. So Jane and Kathleen and Brian, I'm just really curious, like what are the design secrets that make this accessible and supportive, rather than burdensome and judgmental for parents and caregivers?
Well, I'm happy to start. Brian and Kathleen, would be wonderful if you can chime in, but I think we've been focused on the spaces where families are already spending time, where they have to go. And oftentimes the places where they have to go are the places that aren't as family friendly. So again, thinking about the grocery store or the laundromat or other types of places, as I mentioned before, aren't really designed in ways that make it so easy for a parent to engage in these interactions. And so through our partnerships and listening to parents and community leaders, we've been creating resources that make it very easy for, whether it's a laundromat owner or a grocery store chain or a convenience store or whatever it might be, to make it easy. You know, we're called too small to fail, but too simple to fail solutions, whether it's a decal on the ground or a decal on the changing station, again, really meeting families where they are. So it's not one more thing, but thinking about the things that they're already doing, like sorting clothes or shopping for, fruits and vegetables, or these are things that they have to do anyway, but how can we surround these experiences with language and learning? And if we look at all of these small moments through a child's eyes, that little bright red apple, if just they're born with this sense of wonder and curiosity about the world. And what we're trying to do is create more of these moments in these places where they're already going. But Brian and Kathleen, if you have thoughts as well.
Well, when we do a talking is teaching session, you can see the eyes light up with parents and grandparents. When we talk about how during changing a diaper and talking to the child during changing the diaper, you're building brain connections. It is, people sit up straight in their chairs. They feel the overworked term, but truly empowered. Like, I didn't know that's what I can do. I can do that, and I can do that today, and I can do that every day. And then we have it hopefully reinforced at the house of worship, at the laundromat, and people then the housing commission start to see these posters and these talking is teaching, talk, read, and sing every day, multiple times, and it creates just a groundswell of energy.
That's fantastic. So I want to turn now to our educator friends. We're going to talk about board certified teachers, but I see Carey nodding, and I just want to, I think it would be interesting to hear from both Carey and Scott about what it would mean to the world of education to have kids growing up in communities in which they're sort of surrounded and supported in learning. Carey, why don't you go ahead and go first?
Well, you're speaking to my heart now when you're talking about early childhood and little ones, because that's where it all starts. And you're right, Kathleen, a lot of parents just don't know what to do. And so when you say to them, just talk about what you're doing. I've got a real quick anecdote. I have a woman that used to work for me, and both her daughter and her son-in-law were engineers, and they had just had this baby. And she was standing by watching them try to change this baby's diaper. And the baby's fussing and fussing and fussing. And she stepped in and said, just talk to the baby, just talk. And she said it was like a miracle. The moment they started talking, the baby started calming down, getting engaged. And so I can't say enough about the importance of that. We've been on an early childhood crusade. We've been working to give families more agency in their children's lives. And to even go a little bit further, talk about what's in the neighborhood, we had a groundswell of books in the barbershop start. So we had here in Jackson, we had the barbershop owners got together and decided, we've got all these little ones that are waiting in line for a haircut. Why don't we build these book nooks in these barbershops? And so the barbers even went further and read the books so that when they were cutting the little one's head, they could ask them questions about the books that they had read. But it was just a natural way of going about that. And I think that, you know, we've put up a strong readers, strong leaders for parents. It's a website. We passed out the app to all birth through age 5, actually through grade 3 now that I think about it. It's an app called Vroom, and you can put it on your phone. So when you're in the grocery store or when you're at the gas station or wherever you happen to be, you can enter your child's age and basically kind of like where you are, and it will list a whole litany of activities that you can be doing with your children. So it's not, to everybody's point, it's not that you're going to have to create something when it comes to talking. It's just giving parents ideas about what to talk about. And so we've seen just a tremendous boost. I need to be honest with you about this, since our emphasis on early childhood, you know, in our statewide scores and children that are reading on grade level by the end of grade 3. I mean, we've seen that happen, but it takes an effort. It takes a statewide effort. I'm glad Kathleen brought it faith-based. Church is a big deal here in Mississippi. And so how can we involve our faith-based communities in this work? So when early childhood, you know, ideas come around, you can't do enough for little ones, and they're so easy because they're so easy to please. It doesn't take much to, as you're walking around wherever you are, just to engage in a conversation, even identifying colors. You mentioned sorting clothes. I mean, everybody does that. So just, okay, put all the white ones here and the blue ones here and the yellow ones here. I mean, it doesn't, you don't have to buy anything. It's something that's just right there and very natural. And as children get older, I've noticed parents also say, okay, I'm going to give you a small list. Right? So here's your small list with a picture, and you can find this in the grocery store, and that's what we need in our cart. So it's building vocabulary, it's building self-confidence, and eventually it's building all those reading skills that we all want children to have by the time they reach grade 3. Well, even
it's fantastic, Carey. Scott, I'm curious from your experience. What's the difference when kids show up, you know, from a community where there's that kind of support and where they've had the kind of experiences that everybody's just described? What does that look like from an educator's perspective?
So it looks like kindergarten readiness. That's what it looks like. You know, the brain science, as we read and understand and learn more about the development of the brain, you know, 80% of our brain is developed by the time we're 4 years of age. Well, we start pre-K in 3, so we receive our kids when they're 3 years old, but still from birth to the age of 3, there's a lot of that brain that is developing. One of the things that we do is we call it the Power Bag Initiative. Every baby that is born in any hospital in our area, the family receives a bag, and it contains information really that's directed at the parent, but it includes reading materials so that the parent can begin literally on the day the child is born to begin reading to that child. It talks about, again, conversations that you can have with your baby. The three-legged stool scenario, you know, one of those legs is the child. The second leg is the school, but that third leg is the family unit. It is mom, dad, aunt, uncle, grandparent, guardian, whoever is supporting the development of that kid. And when all 3 legs are strong, you know, that's when those children are ready to enter school. And that's when school becomes a great opportunity for success for children. But yes, early literacy is so important. And again, just as everyone has said, those basic conversations that you can have. I've always found a problem with children, babies in particular, that have a bald spot in the back of their head. And that is because they spend so much time sitting in a car seat or sitting in that infant carrier, and nobody's engaging in conversations with children or actively engaging with them in play. all of that work is important for kids.
So Scott, I love that. I want to add to make your stool even more solid. I think I want to add a fourth leg, which is a community, sort of an ecosystem or an environment where everybody is engaged in supporting kids learning, chattering, learning colors and letters and numbers and all of those things, which seems supportive of schools and supportive of parents and caregivers.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I want to pivot around. If people have questions, people who are listening, watching, have questions, now's the time to start posting them in the chat function. And Emily is going to be sorting them and trying to feed me some questions. But before we turn to those questions, I want to get back to this board certified teaching thing. And it's funny, these two things, do these two things feel like they fit together or don't fit together? For me, they do. But one has to do with like the professional preparedness of the teachers, and the other has to do with the support in the community. I suggest that like one without the other doesn't make any sense, and together they're enormously powerful. But Carey, you're maybe the nation's leader on championing this notion of board certified teachers as a real engine for big change. I know that you've seen big change in Mississippi, and we celebrate that. There was a really fascinating piece that Emily Hanford did in the New York Times a couple of years ago about that. Maybe somebody will post that in the chat, but talk a little bit about how you came around to thinking, oh, you know what, this board certified teacher thing might actually be a big deal.
Well, I couldn't agree more with everything that Peggy said, because we've seen really positive results here in Mississippi. And I think that the beauty of what the National Board Certified Teachers Program does is it really does get them immersed in their craft. It gets them focused on their pedagogy and their content. But the piece that I also love, in addition to the data analysis piece, because a lot of teachers aren't taught that, quite honestly, in undergrad, and yet here they are thrown in a classroom and expect to use all this data instructionally, but is the reflection piece, which I think is really powerful for teachers. To be able to step back and reflect on lessons that they did, how well did it go? How well did it not go? Because the first question a teacher should always ask, and I think this is part of what we do with National Board Certified Teachers, when a lesson did not go well, it's not the student's fault. There's something that's not happening there. It's not that the teacher is reflective enough to say, if everybody didn't get that, then let me go back and try another strategy. Mississippi has invested in National Board Certified Teachers. We give a $6,000 stipend to any teacher who's nationally board certified. We give an additional $4,000 to those teachers if they work in a critical area. And most recently, over the past few years, we've been paying for their certification. So they will get reimbursed if they decide to become a national board certified teacher. So it has been a big bet of an investment, but let me tell you what, I am a firm believer in building the capacity of teachers, because I believe that every teacher comes to work every day wanting to do the very best that they can. And if we can, as the state, work to build their capacity, and by doing that also get them certified, national board certified, then we've got a stronger workforce. And then it's those teachers also then that get actively engaged in the communities with their families, so that that link is there. The link doesn't happen by osmosis. Parents need to be invited in, and a good teacher knows that they need parents on board. So to me, it's this natural partnership that forms between teachers and families that is done with a teacher wanting to take advantage of what a family brings to the table. And I believe that's one of the strengths of the National Boards. And it's not that expensive. I mean, when you think about, would Peggy say $1,900? I mean, that's not a lot of money to put forward in building a teacher's capacity. And imagine if you could do that with all teachers, that they had the benefit of having that kind of knowledge about their own learning and where they were. So, yeah.
Yeah, I love that, Carey. Scott, I want to ask you, because I mean, it totally makes sense. Look, we go to the dentist and we feel, which we don't love, but we feel a little better if on the wall it says, this is a board certified dentist, like this person actually knows what she or he is doing and is, I think we kind of assume up to date. It may, you know, like current with the knowledge, so forth. I wonder, I get totally what Peggy and Carey are saying about how it makes people better at their craft. But I actually also wonder about how people, consumers, respond to it. Does it make a parent feel like, oh, my kid's got a good teacher. My kid's teacher is board certified, or I believe what this teacher is telling me about my kid, and I believe in what this teacher is teaching my kid. Does it make other teachers think, oh, that teacher is a go-to teacher? I'm just curious what this means when you inject this into the water stream.
So if you'll see above my left shoulder, there are 2 certificates on the wall, and those are my national board certifications hanging over there. The doctoral stuff is on another wall hidden away, but the important ones are right behind me. And that's a reminder to me on a daily basis that all of us, no matter what our role happens to be, superintendent, principal, teacher, et cetera, that it is a privilege to work in this profession. It is a privilege to serve teachers. The number one, Peggy said this earlier, the number one factor that improves student outcomes, that improves student achievement is the teacher. And what greater investment, what more important investment can we make today in education than investing in our teacher? National Board Certification is the gold standard in education across the country. It is why I'm in Texas. You heard Carey talk about Mississippi making great investments in National Board Certification. Texas does the same thing. We pay certification for teachers. Board certified teachers in Texas can make between $3,000 and $9,000 in additional compensation. But all of that is because the certification is more than just a piece of paper. It improves one's ability to educate children. It improves outcomes for children. It improves, and you fill in the blank. But our teachers that are board certified are in demand because parents know, those conversations around the water cooler, the swimming pool, wherever it may be, as we're thinking about teachers for next year, parents should have a voice in that, and parents want national board certified teachers, i.e. they want the very best teachers for their children. And frankly, as a superintendent, we should ensure that every kid every day has a great teacher, not just a good or an average, but a great teacher. And National Board Certification is one way to ensure that every kid every day has access to greatness so that they in turn can be great themselves.
So let's say that somebody is listening to this webinar. We really hope that's true. And they think this, like what Peggy said, and Carey and Scott's endorsement of that is huge. Like, I want that in my town. What's the first step? Where do they go? How do they figure out what's going on? And who would they start to talk to about, starting a little groundswell in a town about board certified teachers?
So in Texas, we've started that groundswell here. I've been in this district for 2 years, and I was the only board certified teacher. We don't have any board certified teachers, but our teachers are hungry to learn. The nature of an educator is constant improvement. We want to get better and better, and simply introducing the mechanism as a way to improve teacher quality, as a way for teachers to grow and enhance themselves. Teachers are hungry for those opportunities. So we're simply bringing awareness of this opportunity to a local school, to a local school system, to the public eye. Teachers jump at these opportunities.
Hey, Peggy, so let's test this out. Kathleen's sitting there in Detroit, and let's just posit that Kathleen didn't know about board certified teachers before, but she's listening to this and she thinks this is awesome. Like, okay, we should have more of these folks in Detroit, in Wayne County. What would Kathleen do?
Kathleen would either contact the National Board for Professional Teaching Standards. And Kathleen, in Michigan, we have an incredible support network. to support teachers going through the national board process. These people are amazing. I've been there with them, doing the work with them as well, how they have embedded and support networks in ways that you can't imagine. School districts come to them for this support. A lot of them do it on their own because they are board certified teachers. And Scott knows this as well. You know, raise your hand and here we come. We want to share this information. We want to share our expertise, which is your third leg of our mission. And thinking about, you know, if you do not have someone within your own district, we can connect you with someone virtually so that you have the supports that are in place. University of Mississippi has a connection that has national support online so that everybody has this opportunity to go through the process of board certification.
That's great. Thanks so much. I'm going to call on Emily. I'm going to ask Emily to turn on her screen. She's been monitoring questions, and I'm going to ask her to pose a couple of them. I know that there are questions about costs on the side of the learning happens everywhere. Like, oh, it all sounds so simple, but nothing happens by magic, and nothing is free. So, Jane, maybe you'd start on this question of costs that people are noodling about in the chat room.
Sure. And Imani, it is a great question. So thank you for sharing. So I would say through talkingisteaching.org/communities, which I hope everyone here will visit today, there are some free resources that can be accessed immediately. And as Kathleen would know, can attest to, many of them are free. Downloadables, social media graphics that you can share through your channels. We have a monthly content bundle that goes out every month with, you know, every month we have a different theme, like food or weather or summer. And so we do have a wide range of free resources that can be shared almost immediately with families. And then when it comes to some of our, you know, the posters and the signage, again, those are all downloadable for free, but there are, you know, printing costs, and they can all be customized with a partner local partners logo. And then when it comes to kind of transforming these spaces, I would say the answer really depends on the types of spaces you're looking to transform, the types of resources that you're looking to share. And so the costs do vary. So we would love for you to reach out directly to us, and we would love to hear more about your needs and the spaces that you're looking to transform and work with. So I think the short answer is it depends, but we'd love to stay in touch and hear more about what you might have in mind, all by visiting talkingisteaching.org/communities. I don't know, Kathleen, if you have thoughts on costs.
Well, the point out, so we're a state and federally funded program. In addition, we do have grant funding available from foundations. One of them is the Clinton Foundation. But here's the beauty, again, of Talking is Teaching. The very expensive part is collateral materials, of creating the materials and the logo and the design and all that creative work that is done. So within our current budgets across grants, we're able to out printing costs and the like. And we have certain programs where the item's a little pricier, for instance, a bib, but we use that in a certain application. So I think it's creative. It's taking advantage of amazing resources that are good to go, ready to go. And then, you know, looking at your budgets, and it's an easy, not an easy sell. It's never an easy, the right word, but it's a good pitch to make to a funder.
Hey, Jane, speaking of that, what about the recovery funds that are available? How can those funds, is there a way, are you investigating how those funds can be used to support the Learning Happens Everywhere and, you know, the costs that you were just describing?
Yes. So I think just as an example, the city of Milwaukee, in partnership with their local mayor's office, they're making early childhood education their top priority, and into the grant proposals on behalf of the city, they're writing into their grant proposals all of these different resources. So they want to transform 10 laundromats or 5 waiting rooms of family courts. And so in terms of kind of actual collateral, in about a month or so, we'll be sharing a catalog of all the resources that we have that were shared in the video. And so I know many of our community partners on the ground are writing some of these materials into grant proposals that would hopefully be supported by the American Rescue Plan.
And then Peggy, I'd love to turn to you and ask that same question about recovery funding and how can that support the teachers who are seeking to be certified? Is there an opportunity there?
Great opportunity because states will have this influx of cash in order to do that. And then the wording as far as the plan is concerned talks about professional development. It talks about certification. And then if you think about ESSA and the wording of ESSA, we have used that as well. And you can use Title II funds. You can repurpose Title II funds for something that is incredibly impactful. So it's a matter of how do you fund what you really care about and fund what is impactful. And I just want to turn it over to Scott real quick to talk about what they're doing in their area. And not only do we have that funding, but corporate funding as well.
Thanks, Peggy. So we received a multi-million-dollar grant from a local philanthropist to really infuse into the National Board Certification process. And that conversation was simply talking about how we can create a much better environment for our teachers. How can we support them at a more effective level? How do we build teacher capacity? And we engaged the National Board in that conversation, and that turned into a pretty significant opportunity. Not only do those dollars, pay for the process for teachers and pay stipends, et cetera, but our teachers have one-on-one coaching to go through the process. And what a significant investment that, again, ESSER dollars could be used in that same vein, but also our philanthropic community is interested in improving outcomes for kids. And to make that kind of deep and rich investment in teacher quality was a powerful statement that was made to our community by literally a local philanthropic organization. So
I wanted just to chime in on the whole ESSER piece too, because I think one of the things that the American Rescue Plan, I call it ESSER 1, 2, and 3 to be simple. But one thing it's talking about is addressing, learning loss due to COVID. Well, how better when you think about what Peggy is proposing and what you think about what Jane is proposing, I would strongly encourage anybody listening to this to go back to your local districts and your states and ask about those kinds of funds, because there is, as Scott so eloquently said, a ton of money coming into these states, and this is the most appropriate way to build capacity of teachers and to address the issues around children that have suffered during COVID. Just as an aside, I never use the term learning loss because to me, it just sounds very negative and very finger pointing, whether that's at children or teachers. And so in Mississippi, we talk about how do we accelerate learning for all children. So to me, that's a much different way that parents even hear it. We're going to accelerate your child's learning versus try to address what you've lost. Well, I know it's semantics, but you would be amazed at how much further words matter to me. And so I just have to say, we really do. I think we really need to be sending the message that we need to accelerate learning for all kids, little ones included.
Thank you, Carey. If I can just add to that, Carey, and actually Emily, to add a bit to your question, the key areas of funding through ARP really looks at, building relationships with families and communities, focusing on learning both in and out of school, and opportunities to promote greater equity and family relationships and learning. And so I think some of the strategies that we talked about here today fall directly in line with the priorities and the objectives of the ARP. So that helps.
So we do have a couple of other specific questions, mainly around getting certified. And so Kim actually is asking, and also while I'm talking, we did just post our poll. So while I'm asking these questions, if you could please take a minute to just quickly fill out our poll. Your feedback is extremely, extremely important to us. We really do take it to heart. Anyway, so Kim actually is asking, is there any breakdown of specific certification areas that teachers can pursue relative to student achievement success?
So there are, board certification covers about 95% of what all teachers teach, and for developmental levels. So, you know, from the earliest all the way through, you know, high school. And teachers come in, they choose which certification area best fits them, and then they begin the process from there. They have anywhere from 1 to 3 years to finish those 4 components, and that's their initial submission. Anything that hasn't met the standard, they have an additional 2 years in order to do that submission. So the process is long enough that it's not overwhelming, and the cost is low enough that it makes it incredibly attractive.
Great. And then I have a feeling that some of these questions are being answered by your colleagues posting in the chat, but so actually this is an interesting question from Dawn. How do we get board certified literacy specialists delivering parent programs outside of school programs? Is that possible? Peggy?
I froze, so I didn't hear
You
it.
did. I thought you were frozen. Okay, so the question is, how is it possible to get board certified literacy specialists delivering parent programs outside of school programs?
Yes.
How does that work?
So if you are board certified, that means that you can teach anywhere. I mean, whether you're delivering it inside or outside. But if the question is, can you get a board certification if you're not in a K-12 situation? I believe that is the question, if it didn't go in and out for me. And normally the way it's set up, you have to be a teacher of record in a classroom. I can tell you that one thing that is happening, many of those people in those situations have what we call a CDA. And we are doing a feasibility study currently to get a certification past CDA, which would then lead to a national board certification. But currently you would have to be in a classroom.
Emily, if I may offer a different spin on that question, you know, locally, you know, a principal at the school level has a wonderful opportunity to leverage talented individuals, and you know, their national board certified teachers are one mechanism in which a great principal can leverage that talent to do work in the community, to support their peers and colleagues through mentoring, et cetera, et cetera. And so part of the answer, I think, to that question is how does a principal or a school system leverage this incredible talent that you have within your own district to kind of spread their reach beyond? And that is very doable. And there are examples of that happening all over the country.
Great. And then I think you answered this too, but absolutely there's national board certifications for pre-K. Is that right? Yes. Okay. And then you said this earlier, but could you remind us, what is the time commitment to complete the certification process?
So the time commitment is individual. You have 1 to 3 years. You can do all 4 components in 1 year. I wouldn't recommend it. Most people do 2 components 1 year, 2 components the next. Some people do 1, 1, 2. So you have, you know, a real sense of flexibility, because we know people have lives. And therefore, you know, as you go about doing the process, you have, you know, choices.
Thank you. Last quick question, Jane, and I think you were already typing, but Alan was asking if there's partnerships with public transit systems with Too Small to Fail in the work you're doing.
Yes, and thank you for that question, Alan. We have partnered with local departments of transportation where they might, and also there was, I think last summer, New York, we had through our partnership with New York State, the subways and buses were plastered with "Let's Talk" messages for families, and so there are definitely opportunities. I think, oftentimes Department of Transportations and Transit, they are looking for content to share, and sometimes there may be space available. And actually, we showed some visuals of Westfield malls. All of that ad space was actually donated to us to integrate into malls across the country. And so, as Kathleen mentioned, if you have the creative, and please feel free to browse through some of the creative that we have here, whether it's a mall or a gas station or any kind of public transit system. I think if you offer the creative as a part of a community-wide literacy campaign, from our experience, they've been very receptive in donating space through a partnership.
Thank you so much. And so we are at time. I want to give John a chance to kind of wrap us up, and then I'll just do a last quick little thing. So John, 30 seconds, and I'll take 30 seconds.
Great. We don't want to overstay our welcome, but
Yeah.
I really want to thank all of our guests today. This was such a good conversation. I really appreciate all of your insights and your spirits and your encouragements to all of us. I want to remind people that we're going to talk about another leg of the stool or the table or whatever implement it is in our house next week, which is what's the role of digital learning and ed tech in this whole picture. I think that'll be a terrific session, but to hear about what can happen in a community that supports schools and what can happen in schools that accelerates learning today, it's just been great. So Brian, Carey, Jane, Peggy, Kathleen, and Scott, thanks so much for all that you're doing. And in addition to all that you're doing, thanks for spending 90 minutes with all of us and helping to illuminate our network. It's been terrific and very much appreciated.
And I'm just going to add my quick thank you to all of you. And to please, we just posted the link to register for future webinars. So please register. In addition to next week's, we also have a session at the end of June with Dr. Kathy Hirsch-Pasek, focused on playful learning landscapes and bringing playful learning into your classroom. So I hope that you'll join us again. Thank you to everybody. Thank you especially to our incredible panel. And thank you to John for your brilliant, brilliant facilitation.
Thanks so much.
Thank you all so much. Thank you.
So long.